Don't just take whatever order you want, but provide us some background about yourself and then your current position as well.
Okay, I guess I will start. I was born in Houston, Texas, so I'm a fellow Houstonian. I spent my younger years in Mexico City, where I learned the language and the culture, and then moved back and finished school in the U.S. And during my college years, I went to Charlotte, where I was had the opportunity to become involved in motorsports, and I realized it was a huge industry, a huge career opportunity, and decided that I had, especially within diversity, a great opportunity to mix my passion and interest for language and culture with the growing interest in diversity within NASCAR. So I was given a job offer out of college with the Diversity Affairs Department, and our department is tasked with diversifying all aspects of the sport within our employee base, our talent pool, our fan base. So it's what our goal is.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Matlock. I am the Director of Ticket Sales with the Houston Dynamo here. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. Born and raised, a big Cowboy fan. And I'm not sure how big the Whoops or all that. But I finished a program at Tech Daniel Sports Management, and I started my career or entry into the world of sports as an intern with the Texas Rangers, Dallas Stars of baseball. Dallas Stars Hockey Club, Texas Rangers. It was one conglomerate that was known as the Southwest Sports Group that was at the time owned by Tom Hicks. After completing my internship with the Texas Rangers, I moved to South Florida. I had never lived in South Florida, never thought that I would leave Texas. But my first real job took me to South Florida working in hockey. Hockey in South Florida is an oxymoron. A black guy from the hood of South Dallas working in hockey is a double oxymoron. I had hockey for dummies at my desk. But I worked 2.5 years in hockey. I learned the sport. I had a great time learning and learning that sport. And I took a job that took me from South Florida to New Orleans. The NBA was relocating the Charlotte Hornets to New Orleans as part of that process. My boss that hired me with the Florida Panthers had left the Panthers, moved to the Miami Dolphins. 2 years later, he reached out, knocked on my door, and asked me if I could consider moving back to South Florida. And I did. 2004 to 2008, I worked in the premium seating department with the Miami Dolphins football team. I worked there for 4 seasons as I began to grow and network in the South Florida market with my colleagues in the industry. There was a job opening with the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat had dismantled their sales team after they won the championship with Shaquille O'Neal, and they needed to rebuild the sales team. So I led the efforts at the beginning of 2008. Worked with the Heat till August 2010. They did the same thing again. They dismantled their sales team. And I joined the Houston Dynamo fall of last year, December 2010. It's been a great ride. I'm really enjoying the opportunity to be with the Dynamo as a ticket sales director, and I'm looking forward to hopefully enlightening you guys about diversity in marketing and sports.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to be on this panel, which is a super panel, which means more pressure on us. I hope you do have a super time. My name is Doug Lidwin. I am my official position. The reason why I'm here is I'm on the board of the International Federation of Gay Games. I hold the position of Officer of Marketing. So it seems like a good place to be. I'm a lifelong sports fan, originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I have a 35-year career after an MBA in marketing, so this clearly seems like the right place for me to be. And looking at the program, I think that this is a great conference, and I hope I can be a part of future ones as a participant, as you all are. I first got involved in the Gay Games at the second event in 1986, and have participated every 4 years since then, including the most recent event a year ago in Germany. And you'll probably hear more about that event in the course of the next hour. I suspect the knowledge on the Gay Games ranges from non-existent to a lot, and so we'll see if we can even some of that out. And I'm also involved in some other nonprofit boards, but this is the main reason why I'm here today. So I hope we all learn a lot today.
All right, excellent. So I have a list of questions. We'll go through those and then hopefully have time for questions from y'all as well. So the first one is the focus of the panel is on diversity in sport marketing. So what are your general impressions concerning how well sport organizations focus on diversity in their marketing efforts?
Well, we had these questions before, so if we sound like we're prepared, there's a reason. I would say that progress is definitely happening, but the rate of progress is slower in some areas, some sports, in some parts of the country than in others. And you know, the good advice is to just make a firm commitment to diversity. It ultimately is good for business. It's not something that should be seen as an obligation, but something that's the right thing to do. And when you make a commitment, expect there to be pushback, but be prepared for it, stand firm, and that's the general advice. We can all do a better job. The world is constantly changing, and we need to change along with it.
Marketing in sports as a whole, I think, has definitely focused on diversity in the past 3 to 5 years. I think organizations have definitely made it one of their core values and commitments and social responsibilities. From the NASCAR side, I definitely see it as being a very strong commitment from the company and importance. And I've seen some really, really neat initiatives start to form and take place, and I've seen the company really stand behind the initiatives. And slowly, the sport has changed, and I've gotten to watch it and gotten to be involved in the start of it. So I think there's definitely a lot of room for growth, but also a lot of things happening right now within diversity in sports and NASCAR in particular.
When I received the question, and I said, you know, diversity, sports, professional sports teams, and I said, you know, I could probably talk from, you know, my experiences in South Florida, but I said, let's talk about what's going on here in Houston. You know, when I decided to look into this opportunity with the Houston Dynamo, I realized that MLS soccer is in the sport of soccer is a world game. You know, it's called a beautiful sport. It's truly the world game. We had a guy in the office the other day from Europe, and he was a part of the EPL, and he says, "You guys have got the World Series going on right now. Outside of you know, United States, the World Series. Who else is in the World Series that's not a part of the United States?" And I started laughing. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense. That really kind of makes sense, the World Series. But that's baseball. That's here. That's our American pastime. The Houston Dynamo. Our team is a diverse team. There's people from various countries. Here in Houston, there's over 80 countries represented. Not only the Latin culture, not only the Mexican and the Spanish heritage, you have other groups like the LGBT, the gay and lesbian community. How do we continue to market? How do you reach out when you open those doors? It's very, very imperative that we do make that effort, because in this community, it's not only what we see that's represented on our feet. Everyone that touches the soccer community looks like you, 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 looks like me. We're all different. And so in order for us to grow this sport, in order for us to grow this game, we have to make a conscious and concerted effort to reach out to all demographics, all markets, so that the sport, all sports, can grow.
All right, super. So the next question, what are the benefits organizations can realize by keeping a diversity mindset in their marketing efforts?
The growth of the growth of the sport, adding to your fan base. When you decide that you don't want to target or you omit various groups based on their culture, based on their gender, based on their personal choices, you're missing out on opportunities to grow your sport and to grow your game. If everyone was here last night, one of the things that the president of the Houston Texans talked about was alternative resource streams. How can they find areas to grow revenue sources? To one, right now, the biggest bottom line they have is paying these players. So you have to, as an organization, in my personal opinion, feel as though there cannot be any stone untapped. There cannot be any stone unturned. All groups, all walks of life, we need to take advantage of that. Whether we're having an all faiths night, whether we're having a gay and lesbian community night, whether we're having, for example, Brass Brigades, our military appreciation night. All of those type of events and opportunities open up doors for opportunity for us to continue to grow and expose our game to more and more people.
Yeah, I think there's two main reasons why it's very important, especially for sports organizations, to focus on diversity marketing and diversity initiatives. One, it's a huge market, and for NASCAR personally, we don't control a very large portion of that market. We don't have a hugely diverse fan base yet, so it's a huge opportunity as the market continues to grow. It's a great opportunity for us to continue to expand our fan base and grow our sport and its popularity. And also, it's a social responsibility for the company. It's an important initiative, and it's a core value for our company, and it's definitely important to reach out to all different markets and demographics and people that reflect the United States population. We are a very, very diverse country, and it's important that one of the major sports in the country reflects this very diverse population.
Simply said, I think out of diversity comes enlightenment and education. And from a business standpoint, I think both that can lead directly to more business if you do it correctly, if you do it with high enough priority. And every time you have an event and you reach out to a diverse population you hadn't targeted before, you've got your everyday regular season ticket holder fans, but when you have these special events, it's a new experience for them. And everybody remembers their first football game, their first baseball game, their first soccer game. For many people, when you do this effort, this is the first exposure to your sport, your event that this audience has had. And they won't forget it. They won't forget the good things, they won't forget the bad things. So it's important that you do it all the way and don't make a half-hearted effort. So you want to be, it's good for business, it helps position your team or your institution as forward-thinking and not a laggard. I use the example of Major League Baseball. The Brooklyn Dodgers were the first baseball team to integrate, but it was at least, I think, 20 years later before the last baseball team integrated. So you want to be the Brooklyn Dodgers, you don't want to be the Boston Red Sox, who I think were there to do that. I may be slightly off on my dates, but there's a message in there. So that's who you don't want to be.
All right. All right. So question 4, are there any drawbacks to focusing on specific populations in your marketing efforts? And if so, how do you overcome those obstacles?
Oh, I have the microphone. So let's start. I would say the key is to do it intelligently, do it smartly. and think through everything, because when you don't, things can happen you aren't anticipating. Back in 2006, the Gay Games were in Chicago, and they had a big push on getting corporate sponsorships there. A lot of big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies are headquartered there, and a nice size sponsorship was secured by Kraft Foods. And Kraft Foods, of course, is a multi-billion-dollar company, and everyone in this room, I'm sure, has some of their products in their home. Well, there were people who didn't think that was right for Kraft to do. And so they were calling for boycotts and protests, and they just were writing to all the levels. There's a lot of big national organizations that took issue with that. And the people at Kraft worked with the people at the Chicago Gay Games, and they were prepared, and they stood firm, and they issued their own press releases, and they said, we stand behind our decision and commitment to diversity, and this is what Kraft is all about. And they went back to their mission statement as a corporation, their core values, and said, this is what we're going to do. Another example of how you need to think things through really carefully is, it was about 4 years ago, the San Diego Padres baseball team had an LGBT game. And a pretty big block of tickets was sold and so on. But it was also a game at which they were giving away some premium item for children. And there were a lot of school groups had gotten organized to bring groups of kids to the game. And so a lot of the narrow-minded people in the San Diego area, got really upset, and they went to one of the big groups that supplies all the vendors in the stadium, and they all walked off the job, and it got a lot of press locally. And so it's just a matter of being aware of what you're doing and making sure. A lot of sports organizations are very large, and make sure your left hand and your right hand are on the same page and talking to each other, so the commitments you make are carried through all the way and don't conflict with other commitments that are being paid at the same time.
I think one of the key things when you're marketing towards a specific audience is finding the balance. There's always limited budgets and limited resources with corporations, so you have to, if you're putting marketing resources or budget towards a specific market, you have to balance that with the resources and budget that you are spending to keep your core fan base interested. So you have to balance the marketing efforts to reach out to the new audience with, at the same time, keeping the fans who have been loyal and the core fan base interested and actively participating in your sport. Another thing with marketing to specific audiences, we launched a Hispanic marketing initiative this year. It was the first big effort that NASCAR has done to reach the Latin American market. And when we were deciding and coming up with a plan for this program, we were going back and forth between marketing in English versus marketing in Spanish to this new fan base. And we decided to do all of the marketing completely in Spanish. And we felt that it was the best way to make this community feel welcome to our sport. And there was a lot of discussion, is this alienating the core fan base? Is this going to make people feel uncomfortable? But we went with it, and we did. Bienvenidos a NASCAR was our big campaign, and we had Spanish collateral at track, and I think people received it very well. So just keeping your specific target audience in mind while also keeping your core fan base in mind is really the balance that's important when doing diverse marketing efforts.
I had to go to my marketing department when answering this question. And so some people may be looking at me and saying, wait, guys, I'm black there. I'm actually looking at my answers to the questions. And so I went to Maria and I asked Maria, and I said, what do you think about this? And so, what she mentioned, she says one of the drawbacks is not fully understanding the populations before you launch a campaign. So before you launch a campaign, you got to do your homework. You got to do your research. For example, when it's happening to the Hispanic community, you cannot just translate a message into Spanish. You must transcreate
that message, because it's not always the same comedian in Spanish as it is in English. You have to also be able to put yourself as a fan, not only a Mexican fan, but also a Central American fan or a South American fan. Because one may find it amusing as the other may find it offensive, etc. So it's important to know how to tailor your message so that it's understood by your audience in different contexts. Another drawback is when you put too many eggs in one basket per se and focus too much on a specific population for that specific campaign and lose sight of what your product is. We've learned from experience that even when we play international opponents, we can't lose sight of our season ticket base. Anglo soccer families, season ticket holders, just to focus on an international community. Instead, we have to market to both of those segments equally. The way we have overcome our obstacles is by putting time in researching who they are, what they do, where they go, their routines, and who the community leaders are, and how our product will benefit them. The more info you have on them, the better you can reach out and naturally invite them to your game.
Excellent. So one of the last questions is, what are the marketing strategies that you have found to be most effective in attracting a diverse consumer base?
I'm not going to look at my answer for this one. I actually have seen we have what's called a street team. And last year they went over to they had over 850 different events. And one thing that I can say from joining the Houston Dynamo in December is that we are dedicated and committed to grassroots marketing. And it's actually going out to various pockets, various communities, and actually touching, having conversations, shaking hands, being face to face, and actually learning the cultures and being a part of that. And that is one way that we can assist in diversifying and growing and keeping those groups a part of our program and our brand.
One of the challenges that NASCAR has, as opposed to a lot of other sports, is that when you're young, you can go out to the store, you can buy a football, buy a basketball, throw a baseball in your backyard. You can't necessarily buy a car and race it around your backyard. So we really are tasked with educating our potential fan base. We have to, again, through grassroots efforts, bring the sport to them through show cars and video games, really making the experience an educational experience. So we do a lot with colleges, high schools. It's all about education, because until they're familiar and they know about the sport and they have a reason to follow it, they're not going to be fans. So again, we do a lot of the grassroots events, and that's really important. You can't expect this new demographic to come to you. You have to really reach out to them and tell them why your sport is so exciting. So that's been definitely important. Also, we have a very strong internship program for ethnic minorities. So I was fortunate enough to manage that program this summer, and it was amazing. We had 20 students from across the country, and we had an orientation for them in Charlotte. So I met them in Charlotte for orientation, and when they landed, most of them knew nothing about our sport, except it was a bunch of cars that went around in circles. So we spent the weekend taking them to the Hall of Fame, the offices, the races, really educating them about the business behind our sport. And then they spent 10 weeks interning throughout the industry, and it was just awesome to see at the end of the 10 weeks these kids had a passion for the sport, and now they're out at their schools being ambassadors for NASCAR. So I think education is definitely the key to reaching these diverse markets.
I'll just echo what my fellow super panelists have said about focusing on young people. I mean, youth, young participants, it's the future of any company, any organization in the world. And if you're trying to make change happen in diversity or anywhere else, that's where you start your focus, because they're definitely, without stereotyping, they're going to be the most open-minded, most willing to change, most willing to adopt new technologies, and so on. I know there's a session later on new media. Well, this is the future, and if you're not there with your diversity messages and all your messages. You really need to be. It's not going away. There's over 700 million people on Facebook, and that's a large number. You know, in the case of my organization, it's an international quadrennial sports and culture event. We have upwards of 30 to 35 sports, 6 to 10 cultural events every 4 years, and it moves around the world. Well, there's a physical limit to how many events you can execute in a week, and so we try to offer the same sports, you know, every 4 years, but we can't do it because sports that exist in one country don't exist in another country. The facilities just aren't there. And so we have a list of what we call our core sports, and then we let each host, it's not unlike the Olympics. Well, actually it is unlike the Olympics. But we do allow the host organization to recommend sports which are very popular in their part of the world. And as a result, we have had some very interesting sports. When the gay games were in Australia, we had a sport called netball. Has anyone heard of netball? Okay, well, it's very popular there, not so much here, but there were a lot of people who participated. We were in Germany last year, and we had team handball, which is an Olympic sport, very popular, but not so much here. But a lot of people were into it. It was fantastic to see that sport. They also had, for the first time, sport shooting, which is, you know, shooting with pistols and rifles on a range. Again, an Olympic sport, but it had never been part of the gay games. And politically, that was an interesting one to, you know, convince the rest of my board that this is something we needed to have. And in our next event, which will be in 3 years in Cleveland, Ohio, for the first time, they recommended we add the sport of rodeo. So it's being done, and that's going to reach out to another whole audience who's never been interested in the gay games unless they were interested in one of the other events we were putting on. So, what else did I have written down here? Focus on young people, and what, you know, update your web pages and your ads, and be very out front about what you're doing. Sponsor events in the community, taking your events to the field, but sponsor events that are already there. Make your commitment real. Use post videos. Use all the social media you have, and if it's necessary, you can even feature in some of your marketing the people who you would think might be anti-diversity, the people maybe some of your core fans that you would think would be against some of these new ventures, and feature them, and by showing real fans saying, you know, this is great, this is cool, I think it's wonderful that my team is doing this. That's how you diffuse a lot of potential negativity.
All right, so before we open it up, I invariably don't ask things that I should, so I wanted to ask y'all if y'all had anything to cover or to comment on that I didn't ask beforehand. And again, we'll have questions and we'll contribute to that as well, but any final comments before we get to those?
Can't think of any right now. I reserve the right.
Just that I think this is a huge commitment and core value for a lot of companies, and with the increasing minority population, one day it's not going to be multicultural marketing or diversity marketing, it's going to be general population marketing. So companies really need to jump on board and start figuring out how they're going to reach these audiences, because it's where our population's headed.
I echo that. I truly do. I would love to one day not have to have an entire session on diversity marketing. It's marketing to the masses. It's just marketing itself. However, it's the reality. It's what we have to address right now, so that in the future we can have just an open marketing conversation, and where you guys can ask questions back and forth. Lastly, the MLS has been around for about 16 years. It is the baby of all the professional sport leagues here in the United States of America. And right now, in order for us to continue to grow as a league, diversity marketing, it's key. It's imperative. it's something that we absolutely must do. As she was saying about, the market share, NASCAR just trying to, get some of that market share, get some of that revenue, that extra dollars. And MLS, and with the Houston Dynamo, we definitely have to do it. There's this team called the Houston Texans. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them. There's this team called the Houston Astros a few blocks away, and there's this basketball team right now. Their sneakers are in their trunks in the locker room, just waiting to be broken out. And then there's the soccer team. The soccer team has been here since 2005-2006 season, won 2 MLS Cup championships, and we had a season ticket base of 5,000. We're the only team in this city that's actually winning. That is no disrespect. That's no disrespect to my colleagues. Derek Beeman, that's the director of ticket sales for the Houston Texans. I can't think of the guy he came from the Dodgers that's here with the Astros, and the guy with the Arrows. There's a hockey team that's here. That's no disrespect to any of my colleagues. But the Houston Dynamo, we had over 28,000 people at our last game this past Sunday. We played the LA Galaxy to close out the season. And as I was sharing with someone before we started, every ticket we had to manufacture. We had to truly work really, really hard to manufacture every ticket. And we have to go out to every media. There's no stone unturned for this soccer team that's been here since 2005, 2006, that's won 2 MLS Cup championships, and that's in the Eastern Conference semifinals starting Sunday. So absolutely. With respect.
I remembered something to say. My event, the Gay Games, was founded in 1980. It started in 1982. It was founded by a gentleman named Dr. Tom Waddell, who was an Olympic decathlete in 1968 Mexico City Summer Games. And he was a real visionary. He's not alive anymore. If he were, I would be nominating him for the Nobel Prize. He's that kind of guy. But he wanted to create an event where everybody could participate. He saw the Olympics as being just too commercial, too nationalistic, too elitist, and not really inclusive enough. And so he created this event, and it was founded on 3 principles, which are embroidered right here on my shirt: participation, inclusion, and personal best. And we still go by those founding principles today, and they're not bad for everybody in this room to consider. But I know that Dr. Waddell would have felt that someday there would be a much more enlightened society, and there wouldn't be a need for a special event like this. But we're not there yet. I'm sure he would also agree with that. We're getting there. But we face a somewhat unique diversity challenge in that our event is called the Gay Games, and yet it's not only for gay people. It never has been, and there've always been non-gay people involved. So it's a reverse kind of challenge to face, but we're working on it. And so you're all invited. Our next event in Cleveland.
All right, well, thank you. We have time for some questions, and I ask that if you do have a question, that you stand up and just tell us who you are and your affiliation, and then fire away. Well, I'll just have one comment while people are formulating their questions. That I was writing notes along the way, and it struck me in each of y'all's comments how organizations need to link their diversity marketing efforts with their core values and with what they do throughout their organization. And it's not a one-time or twice-a-year type of approach, but it's something that takes place continually. Again, ingrained into what the organization does on a day-to-day basis. And then the importance of research in terms of the best strategies, in terms of knowing your community, knowing the populations to whom you're marketing, And I wrote in all caps here, purposeful. It seems like it's a intentional, purposeful effort on the part of all of your organizations. So did I miss anything on that, or?
No, I don't think so, but I mean, what you're saying is walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. And a good place to start for many organizations is to look internally at your own policies. We considered it a major breakthrough that the United States Olympic Committee, I think it was last year, adopted a non-discrimination policy for their employees. And they included such things as sexual orientation in their policy for hiring for the first time. And so you might want to look at things like that, because that's walking the walk. And see how your policies in that area are written. Make sure they don't just comply with what's required where you do business, but what really represents the most inclusive best practices of anywhere.
The Houston Dynamo are owned by AEG and Oscar De La Hoya and Brenner Francis, and they're all in LA. And with regards to recruiting and hiring, I actually have to make a phone call and speak with our HR manager out in LA. And going to your point, the same policies are in place with AEG. You know, there is no discrimination, you know, of who we hire, race, color, creed, or gender background, sexual orientation, lifestyle. It doesn't matter. We want the absolute best people a part of our program, because AEG wants to be the absolute best in the country, in the world, in whatever we do. And so with that being the case, we are absolutely going after the absolute best people for our jobs that are available within the AEG family. You know, being more direct with regards to the MLS, you know, there is a diversity group that actually goes out and does a lot of research and brings it back to the teams. You know, the MLS has formulated a group. Dr. Bill Sutton started this with the NBA. It's team marketing and business operations, and it's actually a group of people that actually travel from team to team to share best business practices. And one of the guys came in and asked us, "How do you guys do your faith and family night?" You know, and so we have a sales rep that actually spent over an hour on the phone with one of the MLS, our team service representative, answering questions, and it was actually used in one of our email blasts to all the teams, just sharing those best business practices. Which again, at MLS, we realize that we have to continue doing a better job sharing the best business practices, so that we can continue to grow our sport in the league.
All right, so are there any, now that you've had time to formulate that? Yes, sir, in back.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you very much for your time. I'm Kevin Catania from the University of Florida. Specifically to the point of hiring, realistically, I mean, with leagues having rules in place like the Rooney Rule and things like that, realistically, how strong do you think your diversity efforts are in hiring, when I still think a prevailing thought for many minorities is that they're only getting interviews perhaps because of fulfilling a need? Like, do you see that there is realistically change going on into some of the hiring practices and the segments you guys represent? Or is there still that thought of, maybe I'm just getting this interview because?
I'm an example. I truly am an example, and I'm not gonna say I got the job because I'm black. He didn't know what I looked like. You know, Facebook wasn't all that big. You know, it was MySpace and all that kind of stuff. But you know, he didn't know what he was getting when he did an interview on the phone with a guy working in the box office with the Texas Rangers. And so when I'm conducting interviews, I look at the resume. When someone gives me a resume, it doesn't say I'm Anglo, you know, I'm black, you know, I'm Filipino, I'm Vietnamese. It doesn't say that. It says where you went to school and you know what you've accomplished. And what I'll share with you guys right now, and I'm sure you'll hear some of this tomorrow, you know, it's what have you done? You You know, show on your resume what you've accomplished, what changes have you made, and it's grabbing the absolute best candidate that's going to make our organization or the organization better. Were there things in the past, going back to your point with regards to the Rooney Rule? Absolutely, I understand. That's just like the reason why we're having this breakout session about diversity in sports marketing. There was a need. There was a need that would be recognized and identified, and they put something in place. You know what? I would love for the NFL to have to throw that out the window, so that there is no Rooney Rule for head coaches. So if a black head coach gets a job for a team, they're not saying, oh, well, he's getting the job because of the black head coach. I remember being at Skyline High School. I got an academic scholarship to Texas A&M, and my buddy Jason Bean didn't get one, and he says, oh, I didn't get the scholarship because I'm white. And I'm like, come on, Jay. We're still friends to this day. But that was in 1993, 94. We're almost 10 years. You'd think we wouldn't be having these conversations, but some of those things still exist. I would love, again, what's your name again? Brianna. As Brianna stated a few moments ago, we would love to know that a few years from now, we don't have to have these type of breakout sessions. But it's something that exists, and I can tell you right now from the Houston Dynamo and AEG, I don't care what you look like. I want the absolute best person for the job.
Well, speaking from my experience with NASCAR, first of all, I get a lot of comments about being a female working in the sport, and I would definitely say that's not a challenge or an issue at all. We actually have more female employees at NASCAR than we do male employees, which a lot of people don't know that. So I think there's tremendous opportunity no matter if you're male, female, Hispanic, African American, whatever. I think you're treated, when you're interviewing for what your experience is. I think our diversity internship program is great because it is giving these minority students an opportunity to get hands-on experience in the sport. And out of the 20 interns we had last summer, 3 of them were offered full-time positions. They interviewed with, the application was online. They interviewed with hundreds of other people, and they weren't selected because they were diversity interns. They were selected because they were the most qualified for the positions. So I think programs like that are great, and I think, again, when you're being interviewed and hired, you're being hired because of the best person for that position.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much. Matt Garrett at Loras College. My question, and I guess whether it's respective to your own organizations or at large, would be what unique opportunities and then challenges, if you think they exist, because you might want to argue that they don't exist, come with targeting, trying to reach out and increase marketing efforts to the Muslim American population. And do you think that to date so far that sport organizations are doing an effective enough job reaching that group?
It's a tough one.
I personally have not focused on Muslim Americans. Most of my efforts have been in the Latin American community, but I do think it's a huge portion of our population, especially here in the United States. I think it's a huge market that needs to be, again, reached out to. We can't expect that population to come to us, but we have to, through grassroots events and efforts like that, reach out. But I think there can be a lot more done in that area.
I would concur. I would totally agree. There's a lot more that can be done. But as I was sharing with George at the table, there's just so much ignorance with a lot of people not just being open and not knowing. And so, I was in New York, and New York is one of my favorite cities to visit. And right now, there is no more talk about the Muslim community center that's being built a few blocks away from Ground Zero. Where's all the talk at now? You know, when they were talking about building this community center, just a few blocks away, there was a lot of talk about it. All the ruckus a few months ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where's that talk now? It's a place of worship. It's that community's place of worship. If that building is available for a place of worship, whether would we be having this conversation if it was a Catholic church? Would we be having this conversation if it was a Mormon church? With regards to what's going on the political front, I'm not here for all that. You know, that's not what this is about. We're talking about a community of people that live in our country, that are citizens of our country. If there's a building and they want to build a church and there's no permits or anything that's blocking them or permitting them from not building a church there or a place of worship, why? What's the point? So with regards to sports in our industry, there is a lot to do. There truly is a lot to do. And it's all about education. It's all about the Houston Dynamo. It's all about the MLS. It's all about MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, going out into these communities, taking the kids, teaching them our sport, having them to adopt it, and bringing them out to the games. It starts at the grassroots, and it's all education.
All right, time for one last one. There is.
Antonio Williams, Indiana University. You guys talk a lot about recruitment of minorities and bringing in. I know some of the efforts that NASCAR is doing. What are you guys doing as far as making it a great working environment for people from diverse populations? And also, what are you doing to train your staff that you have on diversity initiatives, whether it's dealing with athletes or other people from diverse backgrounds? And what is the turnover rate like, especially in soccer and NASCAR, for people from diverse backgrounds?
Well, I just joined the Dynamo, and I can tell you that knowing that having our HR away, they've actually sent some people here with regards to diversity training, and it's just a part of who and what AEG does for their companies and their entities. It goes back to education. It is truly education, and it was more so just brought in from this is our company. It wasn't like we're just going to have someone from AEG come in and we're going to talk about diversity. AEG's HR came in and said, this is AEG. This is our company. And I had it done for our entire sales team because we had some new people on staff. And a part of introducing AEG, they talked about the diversity. They talked about the acceptance, what's tolerated and what's not tolerated from AEG's perspective, and what's acceptable and what's not. And so that's just a part of standard business practices for an AEG company. As far as turnover, since I've been here, no one's left. No one's been let go. To my knowledge, again, that's a whole HR issue, but I haven't heard of any complaints, any grievances because of someone's race, gender, or lifestyle choice. So right now, it's we're a little house on the prairie. Everything is good, you know. However, there are probably things that we don't, and I don't know about, and that's why they came in and did that, explaining and talk about this is AEG, and a part of AEG is enlightenment and education.
I know that for NASCAR we have an annual diversity and leadership training that every employee is required to attend. So it's definitely one of the company's education, again, is very important for the company. So all the employees are required to sit through this day-long training about different diversity issues that might arise at work or while you're at one of the races. So all the employees are very, very well educated with how to deal with issues. And I haven't seen any issues since I've been at the company. I don't think there's a lot of turnover. I think people are happy working at NASCAR. So
The situation in my organization is different. It's 100% a volunteer nonprofit organization, which means people who get involved do so out of a real passion and belief, and they are almost always involved on a local level in something like a team or something else, plus their real world career. And so we actually have a board position called Officer of Diversity. Their primary role is gender diversity. We try to strive for gender parity whenever we can on all of our committees, and we have two co-presidents. We have co-presidents. One is male, one is female, because this is walking the walk. This is making sure we stand up for what we believe in. We have always struggled to get women participants at the gay games, and so it's a constant effort. When we talk about diversity, that's the first thing we talk about. The second thing is geographic diversity. It's an event with its roots in North America, in the United States. A lot of people outside the U.S. still think of it as an American event. We don't like that. It's not true, but reputation, perception, perception can equal reality for many people. So we strive very hard to have representatives running the board from all over the world, which makes it really fun when you have a conference call and everyone's supposed to be on at the same time. It is 6 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 11 p.m., but that's the price you pay. And so it becomes a volunteer group. We have our own policies, but it becomes incumbent on the people in place to help attract their successors and make sure that we continue to have the diversity we want to have.
All right, well, thank you again for participating. Thank you, Dr. Bennett, for helping organize this. Jim, while you come up, sure you can help me thank the participants.